Namaskar. Hello and welcome to P-Guru's channel. I'm your host, Iyer. Joining me today is General Harimohan Iyer. The other two generals are traveling today, but they'll be back next Monday. So let's welcome General Harimohan Iyer. Namaskaram, sir. How are you?
Namaskaram. Great to be on your show again.
Thank you so much, sir. And you bring in some very rare insights that we get to see listening to you, sir. Sir, one thing here is this whole meetings that have now taken a sense of urgency is because the United States has said no more. 27th, if you don't have a deal, you are on your own. And Trump somehow seems this time he's serious. The reason I'm saying he's serious is because a lot of the financial instruments are becoming a little critical in the United States. I've been doing a series on this just to educate our audiences as to what's coming down the pipeline. So it's a US-driven initiative right now that if you don't settle, then you don't have a deal. In fact, I'm hearing Zelensky is going to be coming to DC again to finally sign off on it, and then afterwards things may, start happening in a different way. From what we have seen, 28-point thing was what the US was putting out, which it appears had the blessings of Putin. The EU counters with 24-point thing. And I can right away tell you, sir, 5 or 6 are a non-starter. Putin has said you cannot have Ukraine be part of NATO ever, and so on and so forth. Now, let's take the worst case that Trump actually carries out his threat and he pulls out the support. Essentially, they leave. They don't get satellite information. They don't get the logistical help that they were getting as to where the Russian troops are. And Russian troops are going about it systematically, methodically. They are not going after Ukraine-speaking population. They're just trying to keep the Russian-speaking population pockets together. There's a method to their madness, is what I'm trying to say. So how do you see this thing play out?
Okay. Firstly, let me start by saying that Putin will not speak to the EU. Let that be very, very, very clear. He does not consider EU to be a equal that he should deal with. That should be because he is miffed with EU, to be very blunt. Because despite having been in the G8, Russia never got the benefits of being part of Europe. So to that extent, I've been to Russia a couple of times in this period when Russia was doing well. And I realized that the market was, very phobic, if I was to use the word. If you go to St. Petersburg and go around, then you realize what kind of friction the people over there feel about Europe. So to start with, I will say that EU might put 60, 70, 80 points. Putin is not going to give a damn about it. That's one. Now, why has EU given these 28 points? You see, if there is a ceasefire without the EU being part of, then EU loses whatever little relevance it has today. As it is, what is NATO today? I have been questioning this many a times. When Russia used this as a premise to go into Ukraine, saying that NATO expansion further east is not admissible. Poland was the first one which broke off from the erstwhile, what was it called? The Eastern Bloc.
Warsaw Pact. Yeah.
And Warsaw incidentally happens to be in Poland. So the day Poland broke off in the 90s, Warsaw Pact was as it is gone. But for Yugoslavia, the Russian influence in the rest of the states which were part of the Warsaw Pact was much more of cohesion, the Soviet cohesion, if I was to use the term. The second thing happened was when Germany united. East Germany, or the German Democratic Republic, was possibly the strongest front of the Eastern Bloc after Poland. So when these two went off, the Russian influence in the rest of those states, less Yugoslavia, and subsequently Yugoslavia has also broken into multiple fract parts, 5 if I'm not wrong. And only the Serbian component, because they share a race with Russians, stay with Russians. The rest, everybody has, leaned on to the West or Western Europe, if I was to use the word.
Then our first lady is from erstwhile Yugoslavia, Slovenia.
Slovenia. So Slovenia is part of the Western. It's part of the Western bloc. Other than Serbia, everybody. Montenegro was initially part of that, and I believe it's also now decided to go other ways. Serbia no longer controls or carries that kind of weightage what it used to have was, right? So by and large, what the West did when Soviet Union broke up, it ensured that whatever influence Soviet Union or Russia had through Soviet Union, it stopped at the boundaries at which the Soviet Union was, which means Belarus was the extreme end up to which the Soviet influence was there. So the Czech Republic went, the Slovakians went, Hungary went, slowly, whatever elements where the West felt threatened by, or when I say West, means Europe. And when you look at the Europe today, all these nations have become part of the EU. All right. But all of them are still dependent on Russia in some way or the other, whether it's for energy, it's for trade, because their umbilical cord still continues to be over there. And Belarus, in my mind, is the way in between. To some extent, it was Georgia also for some time, but Georgia of late has become irrelevant. And Belarus continues to be the via media between the Russians and those parts of Europe which are dependent on Russia. Now come on to Ukraine. Now Ukraine has always been, even under the Soviet republics, possibly the best amongst all republics which were part of the erstwhile USSR in terms of development and money. Even Belarus didn't have that kind of. You see, after Moscow, the next big town or city one heard of in erstwhile USSR was Kiev.
Kiev, right.
Crimea was supposed to be very, very strong because the Black Sea Fleet used to be there. The Russian Black Sea Fleet used to operate from there. In fact, most of those old spy movies, if you look at it, James Bond movies, they all target that part of Russia, the soft belly of Russia. So, by and large, Ukraine was, over a period of time, slowly trying to merge with the erstwhile Eastern Europe. The problem here is, while the other nations had limited allegiance to Soviet Russia, Ukraine used to be a part of Soviet Russia, which meant that Russia has invested a huge amount of its capacities in Ukraine. So when over a period of time, Ukraine also started becoming aggressive, and there is a very large Russian population, especially in the Donbas region of Ukraine. That's the whole crux of this
bone of contention. Yeah, bone of contention.
Up to the river Dnipro, the entire area, it is very rich. It is very rich in natural resources. It is where the money comes to Ukraine from. All right, and it is where the Russian population is there. So Russia speaking, I'm sorry using the word Russian, but Russian speaking. Possibly most of them have got ethnic connect with the Russians who are on the other three oblasts which are bordering Ukraine. All right, and this problem was there. Everybody knew it, but possibly Boris Yeltsin, in his tenure as a president, did not want to breach it because Russia was still recovering from what happened after the Soviet Union broke up. Because when a nation breaks up, Soviet Union may be a union of republics, but its assets were spread around all their republics, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan. So there was a period of time Soviet Russia needed to get its act back. And if you look at the period between, let's say, 91, 92 till about 10 years, Russia was actually a non-player in world affairs. It was actually pushed to the back seat. When Boris Yeltsin went, and then there was Medvedev came, and then Putin came. Putin, being a very strong, hard-headed person, he felt that Ukraine should play ball with them. That was the whole game of this. And Ukraine felt that if they can align with the EU, they will be able to get much more benefits than what it is. It's a natural thing. Any nation, any independent nation would like to go where the buck is better. So both had their own reasons for this current conflict. My larger problem is with the EU. When there was an understanding between Gorbachev and I believe George Bush that US will not extend its NATO influence beyond the erstwhile Eastern Bloc countries. It was an understanding. But Europe kept pushing. And the biggest worry for Russia was that there are those fringe states which are towards the south. You have Georgia, you have Azerbaijan, you have Armenia, Turkmenistan. Those are already showing less alliance to Russia and becoming more pro-West, less one or two of them. Again, places which had a lot of investments which came from erstwhile Soviet Russia. So there was a case that should Ukraine fall or go into the other side, then it will be a matter of time when influence of Belarus, which possibly is that, like I said, the bridge between EU and Russia will also go. And Russia will become isolated as far as Europe is concerned, because that is the connect they had with Europe. So that is possibly the reason when I look at the current conflict, and it's not a current conflict, it's happened in parts. You had the Crimea war earlier, and then you had a lot of unrest in Donbass because the Ukrainians felt that the Russian population in these areas supported Russia during the Crimean conflict. So there was a lot of human rights kind of issues which have been substantiated. So there is no need for somebody to come around and say whether it was there or not. So larger point when I bring out all this is, if you look at the way Putin is behaving or Putin is negotiating, he is willing to speak to Zelensky face to face. But he does not want to get into a discussion with the European Union. He does not recognize the European Union to have the kind of weight behind them to negotiate in this case. Now come to the current issue, which is the topic for the day. Let's come down to Donald Trump. Donald Trump has gone into almost 1 year of his presidency, and the first achievement which he wanted to flag, having assumed the office in the White House, or the Oval Office in the White House, was to shut down this Russia-Ukraine war. Whether you like it or not, many people won't agree, but when a nation goes to war like this, which is over 4 years, the supporting countries may be able to support for a year, at best 2. But to be continuously sending aid and equipment and support, so it's going to be very draining, and at some stage it is going to go into the negatives. So if you look at the way USA was operating in Afghanistan, and if you recollect the last time when Donald Trump was president, he wanted to pull out of Afghanistan. That was one of his major policy thing. He wanted the army out of, because it was costing him money. After some time, whatever money was coming due to their army being present in that nation goes away. Thereafter, it drains your own budget. So in the current presidency, the one thing which I feel President Trump wanted to do upfront was to be the one to claim that he stopped this war, because he felt that this was a war which his predecessor, and I keep maintaining it, that majority of President Trump's decisions are based on what his predecessor has done. So he's countering most of the things which the previous presidency, and he felt that it was not just President Biden, but it was President Obama who was running the show from behind the scenes. So this is very open everywhere in the stuff, and he is going hammer and tongs against it, trying to turn down as many decisions which were taken in those years. He feels that he was unfairly removed from office, or no, he was impeached also twice, and thereafter he feels that he should have won the 2020 elections. So it's fair enough. It is possibly something which he went in with. So he, in my mind, was very clear that he had to have something to show, and that something big was possibly the stopping of the Russia-Ukraine war. And let me be very honest with it. If there is one area where President Trump has put his heart and soul in the last 10 months, it has been in this area. He may claim he stopped 8 wars or 9 wars. The rest of them are all, garnish on the dish. The main dish is the Russia-Ukraine war. To some extent, the next one was the Gaza conflict, and let's be very clear, it is not yet over. The Gaza peace plan is still standing on a knife edge, and President Trump also knows that it is going to backfire someday, because it is a very difficult area to try and bring in peace. All right. So this was an achievement he really wanted, and that is one reason why I feel he tried everything. And I can share that there's a friend of mine, and we were on a discussion as to why American sanctions will not work on Russia. And I said sanctions will work only up to some limit. After that, those sanctions will be, taken care of. And I think over 3-4 years, the kind of sanctions which was put, the amount of assets which are frozen, the Russians managed to find a way around it. Any more sanctions would be only counterproductive. And that President Trump also realized. And that is why he suddenly found that maybe, pulling India out and trying to get India to get out of that oil deal with Russia possibly will reduce, because he could not influence China to pull out. He was actually thinking that at least some amount of money which is going to Russia can be stopped, so that Russia can be forced to come onto the negotiating table. The third thing is President Zelensky. Now, he may be coming to Washington again, but this is one man, I don't know how to term him. He's a man who's possibly the reason why we are in this mess today. This war could have been stopped 5 years ago. But then he was also an adamant man who took his country there, and he's taken his country to where it is today. And it is not good news for Ukraine, because Ukraine has lost a huge amount of area which possibly contains majority of its income bringing areas, all amount of natural resources which are there. It has lost almost 80% of access to the sea, other than Odisha. Rest of the Black Sea doesn't have any access. And personally, I feel if Russia wants, at any suitable time, Russia can even push and close Odisha also. I guess it was one of the tenets of the Russian special military ops, maybe 2022. In fact, we were doing an analysis, I was in service that time, as to why did Russia stop where it did, when it could have gone from the land westwards and taken it out from the sea southwards. But then it was entering into very difficult area, because it was almost banging into the Eastern Europe, and possibly would have brought some more amount of agony. That could be a reason. But let's be very clear. Today, Ukraine doesn't have much of an access to any sea. It's entirely become almost landlocked. And despite having Odisha, I don't think it can ever be comfortable with its sea lines of communication, because the area is totally dominated by Russia. So this is the current situation. So let's come down to the US plan. And I feel it's a very pragmatic solution, because you have to ask Putin, who's on, at the moment, Russian troops are gaining much more than what is being reported. And come another 6 months' time, post this winter, I don't see Ukraine being able to hold on to the forward line as it is today. It is a very difficult proposition. So the American plan, as I'll see, is a very fair one. I'm sure when Putin and President Trump met in Alaska, there would have been some discussion on these lines. Putin, I'm very sure, must have put down certain of his basic requirements before getting into any agreement. And I guess this plan which USA has developed is falling out of that meeting. I guess this was supposed to have been vetted out, and then they were supposed to go and meet, I think in Hungary, if I'm not wrong, last month, but it got cancelled.
Budapest, yeah.
Budapest, yeah. So, because Hungary is still that nation which is, keeping a balance between the West and the East. I think it would have been possible at that time, but maybe the draft was not strong enough for America to possibly commit on it. Now, this deadline which President Trump has put on is very amusing because 27th happens to be 4 days away. And right now, there's just a plan which has been floated. So it takes time for, things of this nature to stop. But that having said, I guess it's a fair plan. It's a fair deal for both the nations because a country which is on the dumps today, and that is Ukraine, cannot be calling the shots. It's a vanquished nation today. So you can't ask them to come on the table at a even keel. I don't think the Russians will ever agree to it. Because right now, as I see it, the Russians are having an upper hand. If you see the way the last 3 months of Russian offensives have moved, they are going very slow. They are taking their own time because they don't want to possibly. Yeah. They are going very slow. They don't want to risk any more losses. They are doing a very slow and deliberate thing because they know the end is known. This winter is going to be a very tough winter for the Ukrainians. So today the Russians are in a very strong position and they will definitely try and negotiate it from a point of strength. The US also knows that if they miss the bus this time, the next time when they come up for a similar scenario, the Russians will be stronger. And possibly the American proposal will not have this much of strength also, what it is showing today. So there are certain areas in these 24 points where the Russians have to yield, especially on issues that they will allow Ukraine to stay as an independent nation. They will not interfere in Ukraine's internal affairs. Ukraine continues to hold an army of 600,000 people. There is no embargo on the West or US to arm and protect Ukraine. So there are so many things which a nation which is on the upswing may or may not accept as part of this proposal. But if this proposal has been vetted and accepted in principle by Putin, it's a very fair one. Now, I was very enthusiastic when I saw this proposal, and I thought possibly this is the way a negotiation goes, not the way India-Pakistan negotiation is being claimed by the White House. This is the way possibly a conflict can be brought to termination, where you have a fair call from both sides. When you look at the European proposal, it appears to be a proposal of somebody who is possibly, I won't even call it equal, I'll say somebody who's on the upper hand. For Russia to agree to the European proposal when they are having the upper hand doesn't sound to logic. So the things like they will decide on Ukraine's induction into NATO. The whole war has started by this issue of Ukraine not going to NATO. So until and unless that commitment is put on the table, no one is going to negotiate. So if you keep that proposal, that major, point of contention open, then this negotiation is not happening. Then to say that entire Russian assets will be, kept. The American proposal says $1 billion, $100 billion, which will be, kept for development of Ukraine. And I believe that also he said will be given back in pieces back to the Russians. So you can't expect a nation which is on the upper hand to negotiate something from weaker side. Why has the European Union done this? In my mind, I feel they feel left out. In fact, last time when President Trump suddenly decided to have a summit meeting with President Putin in Alaska, I don't believe he interacted with the EU leadership. It was only post that meeting that he called the entire EU heads of state to White House to discuss what he discussed with President Putin. So, these are areas where I find the EU feels that it has got left on the wayside. In these 4 years, let's be very clear, France, to some extent Germany, UK, and definitely the fringe states of Poland and Czechoslovakia, Czech and Slovakian republics, they have invested heavily inside Ukraine. And I'm sure their business interests will all get damaged if the deal goes in the way the US deal is coming out. They'll all get marginalized. So they feel a little pained that they have supported a nation for the period of 4 years and they are not getting a look in or a say in the way this negotiation comes about. The next issue is what is NATO and what is the future of NATO? Is NATO such a big issue where today the President of US says, I am putting more money than the people who are being protected. So tomorrow if NATO collapses, then what? How does the EU stay together? Because even within the EU, there are a lot of fissures. Not many people accept the word of Brussels. And every nation has its own policy to go for. And the biggest culprit there is UK. Having pulled out of
Brexit.
Brexit. Going through Brexit, they have cut themselves financially from the EU. And they were a big chunk because that is where the EU link to the US was there. So through Brexit, if you look, the business interests of US has gone down. France, Spain and Germany have their own agendas and interests. So what happens to the smaller nations which are there in the EU? How do they continue subscribing to the EU without having kind of say? To that extent, I feel EU feels a little neglected, and that is why this new proposal has come. So how is it going to go forward? If the Europeans think that they are 28 and the US 24 will be weighed against and they'll come with a via media of 26, I don't see it happening. Because President Putin possibly is only going to negotiate on what President Trump has put out. And there also, I don't think all 24 will be agreed to. There will be some hold up, some points in that proposal because it does not entirely suit Russia as it stands. So there would be some revisit on certain areas. Some things may be put on a back burner for a period of time. There could be a time holiday for certain things to come into force. And I think it all will become clear if there is a summit meeting between the two presidents very soon. So I am very interested to see what President Zelensky gets when he comes to the White House. You remember the first time when he came, he got a nice rollicking from three directions. The president, the vice president, and the secretary of state all were at him. The next time when he came, he got a royal reception. So now he's coming back. Let's see how it goes. Because now we are coming into tested times for President Trump. He needs to do something, show something big. Otherwise, he's losing his midterms are coming very close. And I believe the approval ratings are coming to the 40s. If I'm not wrong, it is around 39 or 40 as of now. So which is a huge drop from what it was a year ago. So he would like to reselect himself because if he loses big time in these midterms, he will lose control of the Senate and the Congress. And even in the current Congress and the Senate, he is finding areas where his own flock is not playing along with him. I believe 2 of the bills have been struck down. Even as that, I believe the Congress has even passed that bill on tariff imposition. So he is in a little bit of a bother right now. He cannot afford to lose, especially a couple of very important governor elections coming up next year, and then of course midterms for Senate and Congress. And he needs this Ukraine deal very badly. And it is not just he; the Republicans need it very badly. So he will try his very best to yield to large amount of areas where there is contention, possibly hold back some contentious issues and try and get this deal through. Whether he is able to pull the European Union along or the European Union buckles down and comes online, these are difficult decisions to predict today. I, as an analyst, look at it as interesting times. That's why when today this point came about, I said, well, let's discuss it. Because though it is too premature to come to a final analysis as to how things will plan out. But maybe next time, sometime later, we can discuss each of these issues point by point. Once there is some more, communication from two ends on each of these. As of now, there are just 2 proposals which are on the table. And let's see how the Russians react to it. Because even Russia knows that I think it's already December, and whatever gains they have got this year, it's going to get frozen because winter is going to be very heavy. And thereafter, the going for this year till next March, April is not going to be much. So would he want to extend it for 1 more year? Because he's also feeling the pain of this battle. Let's be very clear. He may be showing off that he is not getting affected, but yes, 5 years, no nation can afford to be in war. World War lasted for 6 years, and a nation which was, controlling the world disappeared after that. Right? They were actually down to their last pennies when the World War ended. And had it extended for another couple of years, UK would have really got obliterated. So it is tough for any nation to be at war for more than, I would say, a month. But for somebody to be at war for more than 5 years, 4 years, is a tough time. I'm definitely looking forward to this proposal being discussed from both ends. And I feel the EU proposal will be pushed to the backside, and some way forward with the American proposal will go through. Whether the Ukrainian president agrees to it, like he said, 27th is coming, tomorrow is coming to Washington. So it will be interesting times, whether he accepts it or he bargains with, because he'll now come with the EU proposal and ask President Trump to, add a couple of, or modify the proposal by a couple of areas, because that is how the thing moves, because he also has to survive in Ukraine. So it will be interesting times, and I think I'll stop here and maybe we can discuss. Thank you.
Thank you so much, General Harimohan Iyer. And viewers, I have been doing a series of monologues explaining some of the undercurrents about Europe, United States, especially from a financial point of view. I don't know how many of you had a chance to watch about the Eurozone problem, where you have the European Central Bank, which is setting the monetary policy for the 20 member nations that all use the euro currency, but each of these nations has their own central bank. So fiscal policies are changing from country to country, and this leaves a lot of challenges open. And so this gives you an idea. We probably didn't look at all this. Oh, okay, they have a single currency, everything is fine. No, everything is not fine. A lot of challenges. You have to take a look at that, and there are more such monologues coming. I've already taped them. We are editing, and then we are putting them through the stream. For example, the country of Ukraine, the country of Poland, these are all formed only like less than 100 years ago. What Poland is before First World War was a much bigger portion than what it is today. It was not even Poland, it was called Prussia, Prussian Empire. Yeah. So you have to take, and the people that are living in these areas, they have all these old, tribal loyalties. It's just like Afghanistan, only a little bit more polished. And so there are lots of small challenges, small problems, and large problems too. And if the euro itself is looking like it's going to break up, I don't know. God save the countries, because first of all, problems like they are not able to pay pensions in Europe, France, Germany. Germany, because they took on a economically weaker Eastern Germany into the fold, they have really not recovered from that. And they needed the cheap oil from Russia to keep their industries going. And when you come in and say no more that, I mean, they are General Harimohan Iyer, anywhere in the Western Europe, whether it is France or Germany or UK, people are screaming that their utility rates, their bills have gone through like not 10-20%, they are talking about multiples of 100%. People just can't afford to pay anymore.
Sriji, the point is, let's look at Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
All the countries of Eastern Europe, they were possibly trying to come out of communist or socialist. I won't use the word communist. They were all socialist.
And they don't want to go back there. Yeah.
They don't want to go back there. They want to become possibly economically forward nations. And whatever they gained in 10, 15 years of, pulling out of the USSR or the Warsaw Pact, possibly in the last 5 years they have given, because I had 2 years of COVID and pandemic also to it. So when you add this 1 plus 1, it is a big blow. It is not a hunky-dory anywhere, whether it is Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, because all of them are trying to resurrect themselves. So there is a lot of problem in that area. And like you said, Germany has its problems, because East Germany came with a lot of negatives when it came and joined. So it has taken them 20-25 years to somehow come above, normal. They don't want to be there. They want to make it the biggest nation. Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you, sir. We have a few questions. I know you have a hard stop. Let's try and see how quickly we can go through the questions.
No. I have time. I have 20 minutes.
Yeah, 20 minutes. And we have, 6 or 7 questions. So, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh today talked about Sindh joining India in near future. This is completely new. What does it imply? We are throttling into an offensive defense. It will be huge.
When this point came about, we liberated East Pakistan, right?
What did we get?
When we liberated East Pakistan, did we annex it? Or let's say last time we were discussing about the Siliguri corridor.
Yeah.
Did we even get those 25 kilometer or 50 kilometer buffer area inside Siliguri corridor from a nation that we have liberated? In today's world, in fact, after post-World War, there is no annexation. That is a no-no. So even if, let's say, tomorrow Sindh breaks out of Pakistan, it will become possibly a buffer state. It will become a buffer state between India and whatever is left of Pakistan. So be rest assured, it will be like what Bangladesh was maybe a couple of years back. So all this talk about, yes, the only area which we have claims on, and that has been passed in a parliamentary resolution, is Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir, because it is an integral part of India, and therefore we feel that should be given back to us. So if tomorrow for some reason POJK and the areas to the north of it, that is Gilgit-Baltistan and the northern areas, if they tomorrow decide to break away from Pakistan and they offer to join India, I am sure India will be more than welcome to take them on board. But if they tomorrow decide that they'll break away from Pakistan and become an independent buffer state, we cannot turn around and say, no, you are part of India. So to that extent, this statement which he has said, Sindh joining India, I don't think he mentioned India. Possibly, see, Sindh has been in a pot boiler since independence. The major reason, in fact, I think we had a earlier discussion on it sometime when we were discussing Sindoor, not on your channel, on Gunner's site, Gunner Shot. The entire communities who moved in from India, other than Punjabis, all the Muslim families which moved in from India, hinterland, They were all pushed out of Punjab to Sindh, because Sindh those days was all deserts. And they were what was the muhajirs or refugees, as they term it. So the entire MQM which started over there was for that reason, because they felt that they were cheated. Right? So it's not a new thing that Sindh is on the boil. It has been on a simmer for a very, very long time. Maybe people are talking about Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and all. I always maintain that Sindh has always been on the same levels. So if there is an implosion in Pakistan, Sindh will also be part of it. Whether it merges with India or it stays as an independent buffer state, these are things to be seen later. But I don't think it will be proper for India to ask or Sindh to become part of India should it break away. It's entirely on the Sindhi population. If they decide that it's better to be part of India and they unilaterally wants to come and join India, it's a different thing. But I don't think India as a nation will like to interfere into these things overtly.
Next question. Did Russia go into Ukraine initially to destroy the labs creating viruses, or it was not true?
All this talk came about in 2022 when the special military operations was being planned and discussed. Every nation needs a excuse to start some kind of a military operation. It could be like India had to bring Pahalgam to start Op Sindoor, or Pulwama to do the Balakot. So possibly this was one of those reasons which, yes, the US labs were there. They were doing some biological testing, possibly testing of drugs. There was some talk that the Russian population was the one on which all these tests were happening in the Donbass. Then these are all statements without any value or proof. And the basic thing which Russia felt was it felt that President Gorbachev, when he was the General Secretary of the USSR, and he yielded a lot of Russian lands to Ukraine when both the nations were part of the USSR. So that time possibly it did not have a compounding effect because the apex was still controlled by Moscow. But when Soviet Union broke away, the Russians felt that their assets, including a very large chunk of Russian-speaking population, which were ethnically more aligned to Russia, were in the Ukraine. And over a period of time, they felt that they were being mistreated by the Ukrainian-speaking people. So that possibly is the main reason for which these operations are happening. Not to forget the entire Donbass and especially the areas to the south, Crimean belt. It is very rich in natural resources and it has gotten access to Black Sea. All this can be compounded as possibly the reason why Russia went in.
Karthik wants to know, how did Putin agree to USA using Russian money to rehabilitate Ukraine?
He's not agreed, number one. I don't know. That's why I said once these 24 proposals are put across, how many, when they come to the negotiating table, there will be some things which will be accepted, some things which will be put for later, and something which will not be accepted. That's how negotiations go. Secondly, even if let's for 1 minute assume that he accepted it, this entire assets have been frozen because the money is lying in the West and it is all in dollars. So it is at the moment not available to him. Very much possible that he negotiated and felt, let me at least get my bigger chunk, let it be $100 billion gone, the rest of the money will come back. Because all his oligarchs' money has all been frozen away by the West, because it was all lying in Swiss banks and all these areas, Caymans, etc., etc. So they are all at the moment not available to him. So Jo Milta Hai is trying to take. You should look at it in that line. But once again, I say he's not agreed to the US plan as yet. He's just given his consent that this is possibly on the right lines and he can start negotiations. The negotiation, once it starts, then you'll realize what he agrees to and how much he agrees to. Possibly he may not agree to the figure as it's been put out in the plan. There may be a wire media in between.
Next one, please. General Harimohan Iyer, who was behind the sending Boris Johnson to disrupt the peace treaty that was going to take place between Russia and Ukraine? Was it the secret city of UK or Washington?
Boris Johnson didn't go to stop the war. If you look at it, Boris Johnson was sent to give Ukraine a little bit of backup to say that yes, the West will hold ground with them. No, Boris Johnson doesn't have too much of clout inside Russia to be able to negotiate something, especially with a man like Putin. So he spent most of his time in Ukraine trying to get the Russian-speaking public on areas which were likely to get affected to stay behind Ukraine. Possibly that, and possibly he went down to tell President Zelensky that you don't worry, the money and equipment and all support is going to come from the West. It was more like a ambassador from the West who went down to give support to Ukraine to continue fighting. Let me be very clear, since the time Crimea went down in 2014, the next 6 years, the West literally has armed and trained Ukraine. So they have literally pushed Ukraine into this war. And now they feel that they have got themselves, their hands dirty. And that's why if you look at President Trump, he keeps blaming President Obama and President Biden for the current crisis. Because possibly he did not see it in his first term, or he possibly didn't understand the implications in his first term. He was more focused about Afghanistan in his first term. So I don't think he went for doing any peace treaty, is my personal opinion.
Shiva wants to know, post-Soviet Union breakup, a small territory in Moldova, a Russian territory called Communist Transnistria formed. Does it have any significance today in the Ukraine war?
Yes, it does. It is the Russian connect to its erstwhile areas of influence.
Yeah.
And as Ukraine in between. So now if you look at the southern part of Ukraine, and should Russia push towards, let's say, West, there was some literature on this that Russia intends to, link up using Odisha and get on to Moldova and support, because it cannot support it from any other side. And that is what Poland is more worried about, because if Russia reaches there with its whole national might, then both Poland will become difficult to survive, because Hungary will capitulate. Hungary is midway today. And Russia is not a socialist country today. It's a capitalist country. So Hungary will have no reasons to not align with Russia, because most of its requirements still come from there, including food. So it will come cheaper. So I don't think Hungary will object to it. And if Hungary also falls in line with Belarus on the other side, it will be very difficult for Poland to survive. And like I said before, Poland was the start of the domino. It was when Perestroika started in Poland in the 80s. That is when the Soviet Republic started collapsing. And it would have been Poland first.
Lech Walesa.
Lech Walesa's, he in fact stood up to Gorbachev, if you recollect. And Poland would have been the first country had Germany not broken the wall and united. So there were some dynamics at that time.
Akash Sadani wants to know, while we talk about the conflicts going on around the world, apparently America and its fangs in already waging a global cyber war through its AI initiative offensive. Your views?
America is the most powerful nation in the world. Nobody can deny that. And like I think General Shankar mentioned last time, as it stands, it is heads and shoulders above China. China is very far away from catching up to America. And let's put that, China will take at least 10, 15 years to come anywhere close to where USA is. And since the time Russia has lost its influence, the US continues to be the sole superpower. It finds pressure only when Russia and China come together. When they both come together, possibly, then I can still say if they come together, still they are not as powerful as USA. USA without any support will still continue to be the most powerful country. So let's accept that. Today, as long as the dollar remains to be the currency of the world, US will continue to dominate all aspects of business, whether cyber or otherwise. So today all of us use either Microsoft, Windows, or iOS. All of them are what? Controlled by the US. So AI is another new entry to it. About 15, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when Google started becoming a little more open and internet started flowing out, there was a talk which people said that all these servers are in US. All our data are being controlled by US. It's a fact.
Right.
The gold reserves are in US. The world currency is in US. The United Nations is in US. So that is what it is today. So why should you be worried about it? You should grow within your own space and I guess have your own standings in world affairs. And let's not compete with somebody that is more powerful and better off than you. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much, sir. Wonderful session as always, and we look forward to seeing you next Monday. Viewers, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskaram, sir. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much.